Okay, peace, 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 family. My apologies for the technical difficulties. You know, things tend to happen, but we're back. I still have Brother Jonathan Bay, author of The Key, the book that we've been discussing for the past month. I'm going to pick up where I left off at, and essentially I was explaining the Fibonacci sequence and how it illustrates how the masculine and feminine work harmoniously with one another. So I'm just going to reconstruct that really quickly. Reconstruct that really quickly. Alright. So this is the Fibonacci sequence once again. And as I stated before, the sequence is very simple. All you have to do is start with 1 and continue adding the previous number to the present number as you go along. So with 1, you can start with 0. 1 plus 0 equals 1. So you go with 1. Then you have 1 plus 1 equals 2. 2 plus 1 equals 3. 3. 3 plus 2 equals 5. 3 plus 5 equals 8. 8 plus 5 equals 13. 13 plus 8 equals 21. I'm correct. And it continues on and on and on. Like, it'll never stop. It'll never end. All right? So once again, the beauty with this is where you can see how you have the straight lines, the masculine qualities, or the direct focus being represented by the rectangle lines here, these lines here, representing the masculine, a masculine quality. And then you have the feminine quality with the curve, still being able to equate to the same as the masculine. Now, we're going to get into the beauty with the Fibonacci. It strives forever to reach 5. So say this is considered the phi line, right? I'm sure you can see that. I'm going to get you guys a little bit closer to that. So say this is the phi line here. What the Fibonacci sequence does, if you were to do the division between each number, like say you do 1 by 1 is 1. 1 over 1 is 1, that equals 1. And then 2 over 1, that equals 2. But it's a little bit closer to the 5, because remember 5 equals 1.618, right? And it continues. Then if you were to do 3 over 2, what was the 3 over 2 again? Give me 1 second. I had the calculation in my head. Now I have to take out my calculator. Give me 1 second. 3 over 2, that would equal 1.5. So you see, it's getting a little bit closer. So what it actually is doing? Well, let me do one more, just so you can see the point that I'm trying to get at. So you have 5 over 3. 5 over 3 would equate to 1.667. 1.667. My point is that as it continues, you're starting from this point of the Fibonacci sequence at 1 or 0 point. You'll be oscillating above and below the phi line, continuously trying to get, but never quite reaching the sequence. Am I correct in that, Jonathan?
All right. Well, you'll never reach it. The pi itself numerically would be the 22 over numerically the 22 over 7. But the reason is because, first of all, everything is a wave. The dynamics of existence is a wave. And we can think of that in the context of it being the mind of the creator, that all is mind and its consciousness. And that for all intent and purpose, even the avatars that exist and the world around us are allegories for what is not in actuality. Because as Einstein stated before he was about to retire, the reporters asked Einstein, they said, "Mr. Einstein, with you being one of the world's foremost physicists," and a physicist would be one who studies the physical world, this objective reality in which we perceive ourselves existing. They said, "Can you please tell us, after having studied this for your entire adult career, and you being a Nobel Prize winner and for all intent and purpose most knowledgeable about the physical world, what is reality?" And his reply was, "It is the same thing which all of the gurus, the sages, the masterminds of all ages have always said that it is. It's an illusion, but a persistent one." So he was coming to, at the end of his career, he was coming to a point of understanding that everything that he has based his E=mc² and the rest of his formulations, in which he ended upon, was still inside the box. He never got outside the box. He had never pressed the envelope, gone through the membrane into the true reality. He was still dealing with the subset opposed to the superset, and the superset would be the subjective reality from which all things come. Now, as an example, any of your viewers this evening can look around the room which they're in, and everything that's in the room that they're in was once in someone's mind before it came into the physical realm. And that's just basically a representation of that allegory of replication. That things happen in a fractal manner. We do things in a similar type of way as the Creator might do. As we first perceive them, we first bring them into fruition within our minds, and then we attempt to bring them into a physical reality. But consciousness is actually the base of our reality. Everything else is illusionary, but not to get too far off point. Islam?
Beautifully said. You know, I love how you laid it out, stating that it's all allegory. And in understanding that allegory, you then begin to understand yourself, because the truth of it, is that the allegory is as close as you're going to get to
Correct.
what it is that you're searching for.
Correct.
Because as we understand, or Moors understand, that divine, that essence of Allah in which we manifest it from, it's impersonal, it's unattainable. It's not something that can be defined. Because once defined,
It's no
then
longer,
it's not Allah. It's
because
no
it's
longer Allah.
right, because it's only part and partial of. And it's gone into then an aspect of its duality, and is no longer the whole.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it in the aspect of our language, that even when we say Allah, okay, of course that is all laws, okay, just as E equals MC squared would be the program rule sets for this physical matrix, that it is defining with that formula how things operate on this physical realm, in this objective reality.
Mm-hmm.
How this operates similar to, you can think of a video game. Within a video game, there will always be rule sets in which the program is allowing the characters within the program to operate. If it's similar in nature or has been constructed to appear similar to those operable rule sets of our reality or our perception here, then they will simulate things such as gravity, such as solid objects. The players would not be able to walk through walls. They would be grounded. They wouldn't be floating in space, because there has been created a set of rules by which the dynamics of their reality must be contained, wherein when we chose, and everything is a choice, when we chose to
Indeed.
come here to experience this reality, um, we came into a particular set of rules, which are the laws governing the behavior of the cause and effect of what would transpire within this physical realm, this animated perception, which is basically just frames of nowness, single moments, because the past is a concept and the future is certainly a concept.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to think of Allah, you're really talking about a fathomless, beyond our comprehension manner in which, and I'll just pause for a moment to say, I often say it's like trying to tell a fish about fire, a totally aquatic creature, of which it has no point in reference as to what fire might be, because it lives within water.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't recognize water because that is in its atmosphere. All right. So trying to explain a concept regarding fire to a totally aquatic creature would be beyond its ability to comprehend. Same way with respect to us, Kabbalically, we are within that cube of consciousness. And outside of our cube of consciousness is the other. That's all we can say that it is, because we have no reference points as to what it might be. Now, of course, there are other realities that exist, which through one's practice, study and practice, it will be are able to, in actuality, interface with other dimensional realities, as well as modify the realities within this realm in a manner which many might call supernatural. But nothing is
Mhm.
supernatural, everything is just natural. So you would probably call it super normal because
Right. So,
it's just not what the norm is.
so it's like, so what you're saying is because something similar to how the fish, someone trying to introduce fire to a fish, where we would see things. For instance, I saw not too long ago a video where a little girl in India, her tears can form crystals. Like literally, her teardrops out of her eyes formed crystals that, when you pick it up, would cut a board. People would consider that to be supernatural, but that's not really supernatural. It's just something that we're not used to seeing.
Right.
So when it comes,
It could not exist if it was not natural.
it could not exist if it was not natural. So may I ask you, in regards to um, understanding space time, essentially, what is it? Is it just something that that we're supposed to understand as a linear existence? For instance, you have your time of birth, you go through your adolescence, your peak of adulthood, then your elder age, and then you end off and you transcend. Is that all that we should really um, understand or perceive of what this linear dimension is?
Sure, it's for all intent and purpose, all you're doing is uh, identifying the rate of uh, decay.
Mm-hmm.
That is time. The rate in which something comes into being and then goes out of being within this being, within this frame of perception.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, how the body would start as an embryo to fetus to individual, then at some point in time, the pyramidal configuration of their human anatomy would begin to falter in its integrity, and those energies within their body that we would consider a life spirit would be freed. There is no difference between a corpse and a living person other than the spirit or the soul's existence within the avatar, or passing on to forward to other realms. So time is for all intent and purpose, a uh, a concept, because we know that it doesn't operate the same way. It's not a constant. Time is not a constant. If you were to go near a planet that had 1,000 times the mass of the Earth, by the time, if you were to go down and have a crew with you, by the time you go down to the planet, spend some time and come back, the people on your ship uh,
Bit of
would more
age.
than likely have already aged out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because time is not a constant. It's only relative uh, to your particular reference point. It's like
A very
space, and space is actually not either. As you travel faster in speed, your molecules expand. So if
mm-hmm.
one were to approach the speed of light, for all intent and purpose, where would they be? Their molecules would have spread so far that, consider this, if you were to see something moving at the speed of light above in the heavens, then that would mean that it would have to be probably about the size of the Milky Way,
Mm-hmm.
for all intent and purpose, because the molecules would have spread apart that far. Now that might be going into some type of, abstract abstracts that, that we might not have entered into yet. But what I'm simply saying from that, and only going into that, is I'm applying those realities to articulate and illustrate what I was talking about before, about this being conceptual. And you see there how things began to bend and twist as soon as you get out of this small little area of confines relative to the rules that exist here on this planet. Now, like they're talking about, they went to the moon and, walked on the moon. Well, of course they couldn't have done that, because we know that there's a microwave belt around the planet. And they had no idea of what microwave was. If they had gone at that time through that belt, then they would have cooked from the inside out. Right. So there's been certain things put in place to prevent us from going out and wreaking havoc upon the universe.
Well, I mean, there have been those who say, and it could be speculation, as most things are, but when in regards to the spaceships, the spacecrafts or the satellites that they would put up there, beyond our
immediate
I would
atmosphere.
say immediate atmosphere, right? They say that they coat it with melanin, seeing how melanin, that's the spacesuit, that's what protects us from the sun. And what would you say to those who would put that as a theory?
I guess it's about as good a working theory as anything else. If if you were to think about it, it certainly would be one of the most natural protectors that has been around since the age of man's existence. Of course, we've begun over the course of time. We've gotten lighter and lighter and lighter, but it was initially perfect in nature to deal with the atmosphere of the time. We have to go back and recognize that we're talking about an existence which goes back billions of years. But when we start going back that far, then we start bringing in all sorts of various truths and mythos we start going into. So not to abstractly veer too far, going back to what we were talking about relative to Allah being all law, that we can think about it in a purely mathematical sense, because consciousness is data, right? And we exist in a binary reality for all intent and purpose, very similar to, almost not similar to, almost exactly like a computer program for all intent and purpose, the manner in which things operate here. Now, even ourselves, even down to ourselves, they operate in the exact same way in which computer programs operate. And, they have cell receptors and the rest of that, self receptors and the rest. So when you're talking about all law, then if you extrapolate any portion or separate any portion of that law, as you were saying, then it's no longer all. Okay? It's simply that which has been taken out of it, but yet it still remains the whole. Okay? Now, man will always create its gods to explain itself. That is in fact what they're doing. Okay, they are recognizing,
which is understandable.
Mhm.
Excuse, I didn't mean to cut your wisdom. I just wanted
Yeah.
to state, which is understandable, because that is what our ancestors have done in order for us to be able to relate to
Sure.
the energies. They personified them, and uh, in a way, it's been a detriment because we uh, collectively would take these personifications and recreate the idol god worship. Just because it's in the same fashion you have the Christian idolizing Jesus Christ, you also have our people in other schools of thought who would take on certain deities as these literal beings, in a sense, the same way the Christians would take Jesus Christ. And essentially, it's not, even if they did exist, the principle is what we are supposed to adhere to, understanding that a certain deity represents a certain element or a certain characteristic. It was never intended for us to create that idolatry
Right.
and
Well,
worship that.
man always has a tendency to anthropomorphize, which means to give human traits to spiritual beings, to those beings that would be in a subjective reality outside of this
Mhm.
physical form, to explain the attributes, and that's of course how we get, the drama, the mythos, the theater.
Mhm.
Okay, and because
It gets very.
it makes it easier for a child, let's say, to interpret and understand the nature of what is being said, but also understanding that we have been so short-circuited and rewired to the extent that even our vocal patterns are not as they used to be, because there would be a certain tonal quality to the words that we would formulate that would replicate nature as we perceived it to be. And now, with the bastardization of the manner in which we articulate and communicate verbally, because there was a point in time when we were not verbal, we were psychokinetic.
Mhm.
So,
Telepathic.
right, when the confusion began, we have those mythos now regarding the Babel. Uh, Now, getting back to the fact that the resonance of those sound waves that we send out, by way of vibration from our vocal cords, which then travels through the air, goes into, excuse me a moment, I'm just letting my animals in and out when I'm sliding the door, I apologize. Uh,
Mhm.
when we give breath to articulate these things that we want to express and identify what they might be to communicate with someone else. Um, it goes through as a wave to the individual's ear, that then we have a resonating of the eardrum, which makes a pulsation. That pulsation
Mhm.
is an electrical signal, which is like a 1 and a 0. And that those electrical impulses are then sent to the brain, which calculates it and identifies it as being sound. Okay. So again, you're not really hearing sound. You're receiving an interpretation of of what that wave was. Okay, of what that actual analog um, compression of air was. Okay, but our ability to so finally uh, process that, we're able to get billions and billions of differentiations between the sounds. It's listening to an orchestra, when in reality all that's really occurring is various frequencies that are being emitted from these instruments, and being able to coexist within the harmony of air. without clashing into one another or distorting the rest of it because of their mathematical nature. And that's what allows for them to stay within their own particular domains and stay true to their character, to the constitution of the nature of their being. Okay? So when you're talking, and I'm always trying to bring this back to the issue of the all, when we're going into any explanation of these things, you know, we have to, as you were saying, recognize that, first of all, we simply cannot, in human terms, expect to explain certain realities, because there are things for which words do not exist. Okay.
Islam, I want to ask you, in you stating that, is that why there is a submission to Allah that one must render themselves to? Because of that finite, because of our finite capabilities in this form.
Absolutely, and one, especially us, because we have to hope that we can recalibrate ourselves to our particular frequencies. No two humans, no two individuals have the same frequency. It's like turning a knob on a radio and you tune into yours. Ours has been, every individual's from the time in which it's birthed, and it's probably even within our structure of our DNA at this point, has been so discombobbled because of the nature of the Eurocentric twisting and misunderstanding of the nature and the natural. Because we, through our melanin and other factors, are people who synthesize, whereas those that do not have the melanin segregate and compartmentalize, separate, and can't define. That's why they had difficulties in understanding the differences between the energies, the sephiras, the netters, and things that, you know, they would split them up and then, you know, pass on their those attributions, anthropomorphizing them into their gods. Okay, similar to, you know, some of how they, Kemetic stories also, but difference being is that it was with relative to the resonance and the manner in which it was disharmonizing. Okay, like the obelisk. The obelisk is actually something that one is supposed to stand next to balance themselves, the energies that radiate off the obelisk. Okay. We
But
can look at that
oftentimes people forget about the
relative
dome. My apologies for cutting your wisdom. I was just stating, with the phallus representing that masculine energy, that positive or electric, that electric energy. You had the dome construction, which is supposed to be centered next to or not too far off from the obelisk, to symbolize the woman aspect, the feminine aspect of that. Oftentimes, you know, people do speak of the obelisk and don't speak of the dome, so I just want to interject that. But please continue.
That's because you're dealing with all of, that's talking about the correspondence. So things that are going to have to exist in nature, you have all of your mentalism, your correspondence, your vibration, your polarities, your rhythm, cause and effect, and your gender. If they don't apply, then they don't exist. They have to, everything which exists has to have those elements pertaining to them.
Islam, please repeat that. Please. No, because that is so essentially true.
Mm-hmm.
Those those the seven hermetic principles or the laws of Daoudi,
Mm-hmm.
um, which was first established back in or first known back in the days of Atlantis, um, which wasn't too far ago, as I stated. My studies states to me that Atlantis existed, up until the 1500 BC. Is where you start to see like the real cataclysms. But you know how, like you said, the Europeans they really did their work, and the modern Europeans really did their work and reconstructed a lot of the history. They added years onto our
Sure.
calendar, so
Like I was about
truly
to
there
say, even with
is.
the time, the Gregorian calendar, twisting even that.
Mm,
And then we're talking about
yes.
changing of languages. You're talking about changing of tonal structures. Those are the things that
Uh-huh.
come to the ear and shape the mind and the consciousness that actually began to develop whom we are. So
Yes.
when you're talking about recalibrations, that is the relegioning, okay? Reconnecting to that legion of which you were once connected to, ancient forebearers. That
Mhm.
is a religion, is when you're re-legioning, okay, to your ancient forebearers, but not just intellectually, actually on a biomolecular, cellular level, to actually begin through your harmonization, rewire your actual brain synapses so that the proper patterns of thought can be once again operative, because that correct way of thinking is what is going to raise your correct frequency tonally to that which is more properly harmonious with how nature created you and planted you in your own signature. All right, every
Mhm.
individual has their own frequency signature, and the closer that you go to recalibrating yourself properly to that, the more that that's going to begin to dissolve the calcified pineal gland. It's going to open up those states of intuitiveness, which brings about those, magnificent epiphanies that can't come from
Mhm.
anywhere else, as well as
Mhm.
to trigger and reignite not only the genetic memories, but also begin to take you back to wherein one can actually reestablish their ability to ignite or reinstitute the animation of their Makaba or Makaba, because that is a
Mhm.
vehicle. And they say that's the vehicle in which Enoch used to walk with Allah. Okay.
Mhm.
And what that's
Mhm.
simply saying is that it is an aspect of uh, the spirit traveling, okay,
Mhm.
or the soul
Would you
traveling,
say that?
consciousness.
Would you say that uh, on just to put it in terms to understand, like the same way we have our soul encased within our body, we have a spirit body which has its own vehicle, which will be called the Merkaba. Is that correct?
Well, yes, which it can call forth,
Mm.
okay, which can call forth. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, you're correct, because even the chakras would be consider those as being the organs of um, that
Spirit body.
spiritual energy.
Mm.
Okay, and that the Markaba is actually the means by which you can also think of it as an energetic geometric, which allows for one to go through the portals dimensionally, interdimensionally.
Speaking of dimensions, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but you know this is my topic. You know this is my topic. You know I love discussing these kinds of things. And when it comes to space time, right? Well, as a matter of fact, understanding as above, so below, as within, so without. Understanding that principle, as well as understanding the, it's missing my mind right now, but the law where it states that everything has an opposite and supposed equal reaction.
Right. For every action, there's opposite and equal reaction.
Right. So us being here in what is known as space-time, can there be, or is there a place called time-space where essentially you can look or actually be in a place where you can move forward and back instantaneously, as opposed to the linear reality that we would have to, that we're subjected to based on the laws of this paradigm?
Sure.
What would you say to?
You're already there. You're already there. This portion of you that is here is the lesser portion of you. It is trying to, as best it can, assist you in your navigation experience. Okay, because we're here simply to receive sensation. Okay, and the reality is not here. The reality is elsewhere. This is the perceived, very, let's say, watered down, or let's say this represents limitation, this existence.
Indeed.
Okay.
Indeed.
Now, when Yeshua ben Yosef said, "These things you can do and even greater," that was the purpose of his entire ministry, was understanding that you have the ability to do amazing, supernatural things, super normal things, that it's all within your being. Same thing relative to Noble Drew Ali. He's not an individual to place on a pedestal in that manner, because he was trying to have us understand that through science, and understand through science. That's why they have it as a, science is placed so prominently within the name of the temple. You can have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 1,000 people do something by way of a scientific manner, and they will all receive the same desirable end result if they do it correctly. You don't come out with a Betty Crocker, mix and follow the directions and come out with a bowl of orange Jello. If you follow the directions, you're going to come out with what it is that you've done scientifically. That applies to things in the physical, as well as sociological, as well as in every legal and everything else. Okay, is that if you follow the method, the methodology. Okay, but this realm of the superimposed restrictiveness of this reality is a realm actually that is admired by other much more sentient beings than we. Okay, and we have been actually given a position where others, actually do have a jealousy of our ability to do this dual functioning, existence, to be here and be there, at the same time.
Is this relative to what I believe it is the book of the dead, or I want to say the book of the dead, but within one of these, it said like on archaic writings that the gods, um, those who we would deem as gods, or those who we would call gods, are looking at us, stating that we are the gods, in reference to what you just stated, how we have this ability to actually be in two places at once, to actually be able to do certain things, have sensations, have these feelings, these physical experiences that a sentient being who does not have this vessel, this physical vessel here, they do not possess that. There is a jealousy in that.
Of course there is, because also remember the duality, and where two or more come together, there I am.
Islam.
So there's really three.
The three.
Mm-hmm. So that tie can't be broken. Okay, that's more than a contract. That is an ism.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Okay. So
indeed,
with that, it's actually I guess in human terms, you could think of it as like a sin for them to even be jealous. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because
everyone has their gifts.
Yeah, and all is connected to the all. There isn't anything outside of the all. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to make sure that people understand. Don't consider me as a teacher, because no one on this planet right now has the capacity for that. We are all students. Okay, these are conversations, expansions of our intellect and comprehension. Okay.
Indeed.
But there may at some point in time in our way future evolution be those who will would be qualified for that capacity, but we're still in such a infancy state right now, because see, we're supposed to be leaving where we are right now. That's what that uplifting of fallen humanity is about. It's about an evolution into being what we're supposed to be.
You're speaking on a global scale.
Yes.
Not just relative to
I'm talking about
what people would deem as our own nation. You're speaking on a global galactic calling, right, that is that we are essentially aiming towards, or where we are being driven towards at this point, because it's always a upward. We're always ascending, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. And in that ascension, there are stepping stones or octaves, right? Mm-hmm. Certain elevations, mm-hmm, that one has to go through, mm-hmm, in order to pass and be able to gain access
Mm-hmm.
to different aspects or different gifts, different possibilities, opportunities. As you said, they're not supernatural things, but
Mm-hmm.
they would be considered things that aren't typical of a human to do.
Right.
Correct?
It's freeing oneself of the limitations, and these limitations are actually self-imposed. Um, Self-imposed, but
Yes,
we don't remember, how to effectuate the modifications of uh, this perception. As we go further, of course, I mean, there would be those things that would be considered as valuable to us now would all change in the nature of how we would perceive them to be. A diamond wouldn't mean anything if one could extend their hand and create one. Okay, but we certainly have the ability to do that. Okay. Um,
but that is a vibration that we have to
well,
aspire to, because there is a standard.
and
I
to
think that
answer
most.
your question definitively, it is yes, and it is humanity's transmutation, evolution. And the next evolution is not going to be growing another finger, okay, or becoming, morphing into some other kind of, there may, have been those minor changes and things that have occurred with man based upon their diet and all of these things. But that's not, that is not what the next human uh, evolution is. The next human evolution uh, is a transmutation of the consciousness. Okay, because right now we're in the application era. Still, we have our portion of us in the information era. Okay, where we have gained, back, you know, some of the knowledge that we have left. But now there's also those who are beginning to get the information through those epiphanies that I was speaking of, because of those various means, mechanisms, and vehicles of acquiring same, such as the genetic memory, the intuitiveness, all of those factors that we went over. And what that is doing is it's supplying us with the data that is needed in order to make that paradigm shift. Because simply that's all it is. It's just a shift in consciousness that changes the whole entire framework. Now, this doesn't happen to happen with everyone. All that's needed is a critical mass. Okay? And that's the catalyst that will send out that vibration that will electrify the imagination of all and propel us into the next leg of our voyage, humanity. But no, it's not isolated to any nationality or when Noble Drew Ali was talking about uplifting falling humanity. Yeah, he's talking about uh, everyone, but he's really talking about the consciousness of that exists on this cell that we call Earth. Okay, on this sentient being that sustains us. Okay, because we are the self receptors. We are the soul spirits that were placed here to be the shepherds and the
The watchers,
the watchers, the
the
guides,
gatekeepers.
keepers, you know, to not be that cancer that we've become,
Mm-hmm.
but to be in harmony with, uh, you know, I mean, we've had the conversation where we talked about fossil fuel before. Now we know that there's never been enough dinosaurs on this planet to have as much oil as they call shell, you know, fossil fuel. You know, that's Earth's blood.
Uh-huh.
That's Earth's blood. And Mother Earth is, I guarantee you, if we don't get it right soon, she'll get it right for us.
Right.
Okay.
She has no problem living without us.
That's right. And see, the thing is that people don't understand this is time sensitive. Okay.
Uh-huh.
When Audrey Ollie speaking of what those were possibilities, those weren't absolutes. That's what we're able to do. Now, when I was talking about, just so I can leave that hanging like a dangling participle for people to say later, what was he talking about when I said don't put him on a pedestal? What I was talking about was, of course, admire, of course, okay? But understand that he too, like Joshua ben Yosef, the one that they also identify as Jesus or Yosef, Jesus, is helping us to understand that one cannot set an example if that which they're setting an example for does not also have the capabilities. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an example. So they're setting an example of what you and I can do. Otherwise, it's not an example. You follow?
Indeed.
So that's what we have to strive for, is lifting ourselves up to, and they're just simply there as a gauge, okay, and for us to understand that we have to also as well the ability to come into that clearness, crystal, Christ mind, okay, to get that clarity. And it's that clarity that is going to create the transmutation of us into our next manner in which we will exist here. Okay, we're not going to dissolve off into, you know, some other, we'll still be here. But we will have made that secular back to where we were before, but with a higher understanding, hopefully not to return back to the same places that
Devastating state.
exactly. But we're now approaching an arc, coming up on an arc where we have the potential to again reach that, you know, that magnitude of comprehension. But that's the reason why these types of things transpire, where you've got other hidden hands and the rest of it, creating these mechanisms of terror. Okay, because the opposite of love is fear, and the ultimate of fear is terror. Okay, because as I've mentioned to you before and others, that a mother will jump in front of a bullet for their baby at any point in time, because love is fearlessness, the total altruism, giving of oneself, abandoning of ego. And the polarity is, and the opposite of fearlessness, of course, is fear. And the ultimate of fear is terror. So that's why they're creating all of this false terror to try to counterbalance or stay off the natural course of the inevitability. But at that same time, when I say inevitability, it's only inevitability if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. Because we can't be dormant while they're active and operative in their metaphysics. Because the only way that this is going to occur. It's not going to occur in the physical objective realm. This has to transpire metaphysically. So it's not just about being kind to one another, courteous, and all of those things are essential, okay? Because it's only in that state can we clear our minds enough to recognize that that's who we are more naturally. But and to free ourselves of this demonic, you know, resonance. Okay. And that's why there's, you know, all over the planet, you know, those that want just democracy, demon craziness.
Indeed.
Because it is that other polarity.
Yeah.
So we've been afforded with the task, the charge, and the ability to, in fact, uplift fallen humanity. But it's incumbent upon us to make that move, but do it correctly. That's why, in my opinion, temples should be teaching metaphysics. You ask, go to almost any temple and you ask them, well, what is more science? You know, the type of answers that you'll get are mind-boggling. Okay.
Yeah.
They're talking about law to talking about, you know, history, and talking about, you know, who knows? They might even start talking about UCCs. Okay.
Oh Lord.
Well, simply what I'm saying is that more science is functional and operative metaphysics. Okay. Yeah. Man, know thyself, seeking ye shall find. Okay. Be true to thyself. First be true to thyself. To thyself, first be true. Because it's in understanding self.
You understand.
It's elementary.
Elementary, my dear.
Elementary.
But I mean, we've extended the time a little bit on this just because of the technical difficulties, you know, and it's such an honor to have you lend me your energy and, you know, really give the viewers a real understanding of what more science is, what it's based on, what we want to pass on to the next for their interpretation and their enlightenment.
And for their children, because that's why I said elementary, because we start with the elements. We start with
indeed.
With the
yes, indeed.
Understanding dimensions, understanding shape, understanding our base primal configurations. And then up from there, I mean, every child at by the age 4 should know the periodic table. And
true.
the aspects of the energies that radiate from them, because they're only learning about self. Okay?
Indeed, indeed.
And and we have the capacity to do that. Okay, and it's not a quantum jump. This is no huge exponential leap into something. We've just been so programmed as to believe that someone else should be driving.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Very true. Very true.
It's a new day.
And I love how, you know, you know, like as you stated, this is something that we're supposed to know, because essentially getting into the periodic table is breaking down those components of you that which comprises you, you know, being, you know, the body being composed of majority, I think like over 90% of 4 elements. Excuse me, those 4 elements being carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen.
And everything is based on 4.
All of those.
1 + 2 + 3 + 4 is 10.
4.
That's the complete.
10. Going back to the 1.
Yahweh, that's the Jehovah.
You'll have a head, yes. The Yod representing the masculine, have a head. it's like I gotta write it out, but it equates to Eve. Pretty much, the Adam and Eve is what you would get out of the Yahweh. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if you spell it out or whatever.
And
But
it's interesting that
I
you're
mean,
using
it's
your
all
hand
about that
because
balance.
that is the Hebrew, is the hand.
Yeah, the
Okay?
hand. Yeah.
And you're talking about the Adam is the Adam, literally, and the Eve is the evolution.
As the
So,
upward spiral,
yeah,
the progression forward, the
yeah.
continuous process, the continuous process of
The never
the never
decay
decaying
reality
energy.
of our return to one.
Islam. Like, you know, I enjoy our conversations, and um hoping this won't be the last, you know, that we do this. But just a quick question, and then you know, I guess we'll wrap it up. But
Well, it's my honor, and I'm very pleased to have been asked to come, and I'm hoping that those that are listening are able to walk away with a little bit more than what they came with. But
indeed,
thank you very much for having me.
yeah, again, my honor. But as you were stating, how you know, it's not a quantum leap into understanding the mathematics of this. You know, my what the charge that I've taken upon myself is to really break it down to its simplest state, because that's really where we're supposed to be, as opposed to having things so complex to where people can't find a relative understanding with things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in dealing with fractal geometry and understanding how that plays um, in in the cell process. Really, you know, really quickly, would you be able to kind of go into that, just how to be? Well, matter of fact, first, I have to backtrack, because I did have a previous question, because you stated how um, we perceive that this is everything is waves. Everything is waves. That's what you stated. And in my analysis with my studies, I see that the two perceptions that are ever present is that of a particle and that of a wave, right? One representing a light, typically the particle, and then the sound representing the wave. Can you explain why is it that you state that everything is a wave?
Well, as you said, light is a particle, okay, but yet we have light waves, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
the wave is the energy, okay? Now the particle is the photon. That's the BB. You can go on the internet and, pull up, light in a bottle, and you can actually see them shooting a photon into a
Yes,
Coke bottle,
light,
and you see
light
it
in a Coca-Cola bottle. Yeah.
bouncing around. So,
Mm-hmm.
but that the light is the physical energy, but radiating off of that, okay, is different. Okay, now we're able to visually see that because it falls within the spectrum of our abilities relative to our iris and capability to compute, those particular frequencies. Just like, we don't hear what dogs hear, and we don't. Our bodies are made up to only have certain levels of sensory perception. Okay, otherwise we could overload. Okay. We're only supposed to get a limited amount of information. But don't forget the double slit experiment where they shot,
Mm-hmm.
these photons one at a time through that. And it's because of the registering of the information that it changed from a particle to a wave. And then you have the interference patterns, which means That's consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that matter actually changed simply because of its observation.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And with regards to the fractal geometry and how it focuses or um, exemplifies how an organism is constructed,
Mhm.
um, can you find any other familiar ways where one can relate it to themselves so that they can be able to perceive things in nature regarding fractal geometry? Because again, it comes down to understanding that this quantum science, the quantum physics that we're discussing today, it's not as complex as they make it
No,
or as they project it out to be.
right,
So
right,
if you can,
yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, it's like things like string theory and the rest of it. All that really means is that all is one. Okay, that's what it boils down to. You can get these long, elaborate mathematical computations. All it really boils down to is all is one. Nothing is
all
ever,
is one.
yeah, nothing is ever separated in reality. Okay, you can take, um, uh, the two polarities, the positive and the negative, and take them millions of miles away, do one to one, and the other one will react immediately because they're still entangled. Okay. But yeah, it's kind of, sociologically, it's kind of like I was telling a young man today when he called to ask me about something dealing with, I think it was um, licenses and IDs and cards and things. And I was explaining to him that sometimes it's easier, instead of telling you, instructing you, giving you an instruction, sometimes it's better to give you a concept, okay, give you a philosophy. Because with the philosophy now you can apply that to so many other things.
Mm-hmm.
And after we finished the short discussion, he realized that like a light bulb came on, that it's really, it's standing on one square is simple because it's just being yourself.
Islam.
Okay?
Islam.
You just
Okay.
need to know who you are, you know?
So you can again, so that you can again, like you stated, begin that process to repair the damage that has been done to
Yeah.
your signature code. Because everyone, just like a snowflake, just like the leaves on a tree, the fingerprints that you have on your hands, no two are the same.
Well, see,
So it's
you
very essential for you to know yourself so that you can then begin to repair and evolve yourself.
you just answered your question, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I ain't
Exactly.
say it for me. I wasn't asking for me. You should know that. Yeah.
I know that. And also that in a physical way, to understand that, as you were saying, as above, so below.
Mm-hmm.
You know, within our, between every cell of our body are, you know, billions of universes.
Indeed.
So we're just from our vantage point unable to see that. But we do know now that once you go down further and further and further microscopically, to the cell and then down past the cell, into the atomic realm, that once you pass the atomic realm and go through the nano regions where they're doing all the nanotechnologies and things now, which they're not able to do or create in this physical realm, because you've passed the realm of physics in the physical plane, because you're below the atomic structure. We now know that as you go
Mm-hmm.
further, then you simply enter into consciousness.
Indeed.
which
Yes.
would mean essentially that that's all there actually is, and everything is purely made up of that same thing. And it is all one consciousness.
Just being expressed in different ways.
That's it. That's it. So just like you would see on a leaf on a tree, if you pick up a leaf and you look at it closely, you're going to see that it's got little branches on it, just like the branches on a tree. And everything is simply either a replication or modification of something else. Okay, and the dynamics of it only vary based upon so often just the positioning of a molecule. It changes it into a completely different whatever it is, because everything dynamically is one. You know, you really can't have more than one.
Really can't have more than that. Beautiful. I think I could uh, end it off there. But again, I do thank you for
Thank you.
lending me your time, lending me your energy, lending me your intellect. I appreciate you for, putting your thoughts to the keyboard and producing such a wonderful book for beginners to be able to really get a thorough understanding of self. Breaking down where the confusion started and how not only where the confusion, where that confusion,
Mm-hmm.
um,
And
and
remember
pass
that
that on to
the key that they have access to through the Morse directory, that's volume 1 of a triad.
So you heard it. There's 2 other books.
Right.
I do have to remember, you still owe me those last 2 chapters.
Now, so if you have the same, what the cool thing about it though is that if you have chapter 2, then you will get chapter 3 automatically, but you can't have chapter 3 until you have chapter 2, because there are dynamic things within chapter 3 that are dangerous for you to have before you have 2. Because in 2, you have the stopgap measures and the rules and the laws. And you can't bring chaos into that other realm.
Into order, yeah.
So you have to be able to manifest your potential before moving into that. And why I say that also is because you can be consumed. And you've heard me mention before is that, the most important thing is always preparedness. Okay. But the more that you know, the more that you begin to comprehend, the more you realize there is nothing to fear but fear itself. Okay. But we are so afraid of the unknown that we won't allow ourselves to simply fall. But it's as simple as falling.
It's necessary. And it's that time, as you stated. It is that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think it's only appropriate to end off our morning's prayer. And this is not going to be the last. I definitely want to have you on again. I definitely want to see if I can get those who possibly may have questions for you after viewing this. I'll collect those, and then we can really discuss things. The true moral science as it should be, as it was intended for it to be by the prophet to be explained.
If you can, if you can, if they have, those that are listening in, if they have certain questions that they want to have fielded and have answers, by all means, tell them to get those to you, and I'd be more than happy to address those and come in and explain. So if they do have some, we can certainly do that.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Yes, please.
I have.
Oh, I'll just put that. I'm
I
sorry. I
have.
just want to say, if I have anyone who does have the questions, just email me at morebook@activemoors.com. You can place Q&A in the subject line, just so that I'll know what is what. And yes, I'll definitely forward them to you, Jonathan, so that we
Okay.
can have another discussion.
All right, and I'm going to bow out because I have some people coming through, and I don't want them to interfere in your prayer out. So I'll wish you, bid you farewell, and again, thank you very much, and it was my honor.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Peace and love.
Peace and love.
All right. So with that, again, if anybody have any questions, please email me at morebook@activemoors.com. I'll leave a link in the description box below, just so that you guys will know the email once again. And I'm going to sign off right after you do our prayer. Once again, do not forget to pick up your rights card from morrisdirectory.com. Also, as you've heard Jonathan Bay state, that there are 2 other volumes. So there is a trinity to the key. And if you are interested, you can pick up your copy at morrisdirectory.com. All right, so with that, 5 on the left, 2 on the right. Allah, Father of the universe, Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah, you are my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through our holy prophet, noble Juali, to our ancestors seen and unseen, those known and unknown. Much love. Ashe.